What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Endless Endeavor podcast. And today we're doing a solo cast again. And it is November 6th. I woke up to the news that President Trump had successfully won the election. And I can tell you, there was a massive sense of relief. It was like a weight had been lifted off my chest. And I think a lot of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. We're going to get more into that here momentarily. But just out of the gates, I want to give you guys a little bit of transparency. This is going to be a heavy episode for me. This is going to be talking about some massive life changes that I've made, and it's probably going to bring some tears to my eyes while I discuss this with you guys today. Not that it is my job as the host of this podcast to air out my own personal dirty laundry or delve into the details of my personal life, but there are lessons to be derived from it, and I want to share those. So hopefully we can all be better in the future, because that is what this podcast is all about. It is the endless endeavor of life. Probably not going to be a super long episode, so I apologize for that in advance, but we got some weeds to crawl into. And so again, going back to the presidential election, I try and not put too much of my real life energy into politics, into what I consume through my telephone and through my television. And, you've heard me say it on this show 100 times, maybe more. Informed, but not consumed. I think it's important to have an understanding of what's going on in our country, who the key players are, what their intentions are, and if a certain person were to get into power, what does that look like moving forward? At the end of the day, that is tremendously important. And even though it is tremendously important, I still think our primary focus should be what's going on between the four walls of our house and what's going on inside of our bodies and what we consume and how we exercise and how we interact with our people to our left and our right, the people that are in our real life. But once your house is in order and that is your priority, I think we can now start looking bigger and putting some focus on what's going on in our community, what's going on in our state, and ultimately what's going on in our country. And this last election was, probably every election cycle, people come to the conclusion that this is the most important election of our lifetime. This is the most important election in history. And there's probably some validity to that, because as our country progresses forward and our people become more and more divided, I think there's more at stake. There's more on the line. And each time we come back into an election cycle, it seems like there's more division, more hate, and two parting tides of ideology. I've arrived at the place where I just don't know if there is a possibility for Americans that are so divided on so many issues coming together and moving forward as a people. We talk about it very often on the show that I don't care who you fuck. I don't care what God you worship. I don't care what your opinions are on many, many, many political issues. But as we keep driving down this road and we've hit the Y, and we're going farther and farther apart between conservative ideology and liberal ideology. And the gap between the two groups is becoming wider and wider and wider. And I mean, it's no surprise to you guys. I am of the mindset that if this division continues, at some point we are going to see a civil conflict. And again, that is not fear-mongering. That is not me putting on the tinfoil hat and sharing conspiracy theories on the show. That is me looking at human nature and how we treat each other and what we want out of our country and what we want for our fellow Americans. And on top of that, I think if you're listening to this show, you have also probably come to the conclusion that the leftists and the Democrats are... They are not just a different group of people trying to share different values. They are literally and intentionally destroying this country. They are puppets of the New World Order. They are puppets of the UN, and they bend a knee when they're told to. They give our funds to whoever they're told to. And our country has been spiraling the drain as a result of that. And I can tell you, when I woke up this morning and saw that Trump had won, I mean, we've talked about a red wave. This was the red wave that we talked about in 2020. The House and the Senate, everybody seemed to land on Republican this time. And that is not by chance. There's a lot of good people who voted for Biden or voted for Obama or voted for Clinton. A lot of good people that just started to get caught up in the political realm, and they voted for this candidate based on, a union position or whatever it is, right? And again, guys, I think back in the days of Bill Clinton, you could argue Democrat versus Republican and have a logical conversation. In 2024, I don't think that conversation was rooted in logic anymore. I think it was rooted in emotion. I think it was rooted in propaganda. I think it was rooted in control. And I think they really thought that the best way to move forward is to paint our entire side to be crazy. I mean, take out the garbage. We're Nazis. Trump wants Hitler's generals like Hitler had, all of that stuff. And even after the assassination attempt, there was probably a 48-hour period where they were like, oh, you know what? We should probably stop this political rhetoric and the division. And then before you know it, they're calling him Hitler again, and they're saying that he is going to end democracy. Now, here's the deal, guys. If you're a 21-year-old college student and your professor is standing up in front of the room and he's saying, let me tell you some things about this man, Donald Trump, and you are young, you are impressionable, and most importantly, you are trusting. You're trusting of the man standing up in front of that classroom, delivering knowledge to you. And I can see how a lot of young people got swayed. And it's sad is what it is, but it's also understanding, or I should say it's understandable how that occurs. And so moving forward into the election cycle, I started to see a shift. I started to see, a lot of former Democrats, such as RFK, such as Tulsi Gabbard, even Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. If we want to be honest about people that used to lean left and have left ideology, who ended up ultimately supporting Trump, the reason those people came over to Trump's side, it's not for political clout or I want to get a powerful position in his cabinet. It's none of that. It's because they applied common sense. They looked at issues and they said, man, like, I've been a Democrat a long time, and I stand by a lot of traditional Democrat ideology, but what is up with this open border? Fentanyl is killing people. I would guess, and myself included, almost every single person listening to this show has witnessed somebody die from fentanyl. I lost a 17-year-old jiu-jitsu student 2 years ago, and he took one pill of Molly as a party drug, and it had fentanyl in it. Every single person I know knows at least one person that has suffered that fate. And so we see it in our communities. This isn't something that's happening on a television screen. This is something that we are feeling as individual Americans. The absolute disregard for our border and the influx of criminals and drugs and all of the stuff that we're experiencing, it's palpable. Because everybody sees it, everybody feels it, and it's affecting us on an individual level. Again, that's not something you consume on your television and then start to feel anger for. It's something you see when you drive down the streets. It's something you see inside of the walls of your jiu-jitsu academy. It's something you see at your dinner table. It's something that is affecting us on a personal level, and we're seeing more and more issues affecting Americans on a personal level. It's no surprise what the price of gas has become and what the price of food has become. The border is no surprise. And then what they started to do, and again, I don't quite know why they pulled their plays out of this playbook, like with the transgender stuff and pushing children having sex changes and children being prescribed puberty blockers and inmates that are not only inmates, but inmates that are illegal aliens having sex changes on our dime and our tax dollars. And I don't think that these things are a left and right issue. I think these things are a common sense versus hypnotized by propaganda issue. And again, I'm not quite sure why they started to lean into these certain topics so heavily. I used to give politics, I think I used to give it a lot more credit. I used to think that people at the helm making decisions and directing campaigns and writing speeches, I used to think these people were probably extremely intelligent, even if they were evil. And you know what? I don't really believe that anymore, because the proof's in the pudding. She got fucking smoked last night. I know what we were all waiting for. We were all waiting for a 3 a.m. influx of 15 million votes. I went to bed and Trump was well ahead, and I still wasn't confident because of what happened last time. Now, if we're going to look into what happened last time, let's be honest about what happened. We're going to go back to Bill Clinton. 1992, Bill Clinton won the election with 44 million views against George Bush. 47 million votes. Votes. 47 million votes in 1996. Then George Bush was 50 million votes in 2000, 62 million votes in 2004. After that, it jumped up. Barack Obama, both in 2008 and in 2012, had 69 million votes in 2008 and 65 million votes in 2012. Donald Trump in 2016 dropped back down to 62 million. But you can see this trend. It's in the 40s, it's in the 50s, it's in the 60s. And then in 2020, Joe Biden got 81 million votes. Literally nearly 20 million more votes than any presidential candidate in history. Now, we could talk for the next 5 hours about what appeared to be election fraud, ballot harvesting, your dead grandmother voted Democrat, all of these things that are not conspiracy theories. These are things that happened to a certain degree. I can't remember who I said or who I heard talking about it, but they said, hey, it was on a podcast, I believe. It might have been Rogan. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. But he said, hey, everybody wants to just say there was fraud in the election or there wasn't fraud in the election, and that is a conspiracy theory. It's one or the other, right? And he said, hey, is it possible that a handful of ballots were tampered with? Is that even possible? Because as soon as you say, yes, that's possible, well, now we have to be honest with ourselves and say, well, let's look into it. What could have happened? What did happen? And I think every single one of us listening understands that the potential for election fraud is ever imminent. It is in existence. We know it is. And the fact that they were obviously they won, so they didn't want to have any type of secondary review or second count. So it makes sense why they pushed back so hard. But the thing is, if you were confident that the truth prevailed, why would you be so scared and apprehensive of really diving into election fraud? Now, 2020, 81 million votes. And now here we are in 2024, and President Trump got 72 million. Now, I still think there's a couple states that are not fully counted. When I'm looking at this map right here, it says Arizona and Nevada are not fully counted. But regardless, we are in the most absolute divided state that our country has ever been. And now Kamala has 67 million. So the Democrats are back in the 60s, and they were in the 80s. And, that could be one or two things. That could be people opening their eyes, people being educated, people realizing Trump is not the second coming of Hitler. And they watched their bank accounts take a hit. They watched their communities crumble, and they said, you know what? I'm going to make a change. But I'm curious, and maybe I'll just Google this as we're sitting here. But the total number of votes, let's see, total number of votes in 2020 presidential election. And that number is, come on, dude. Do you guys notice every fucking time you Google something now, it takes you to a page and it's like they have to have fucking 700 ads, and it's almost impossible to sift through everything and figure out what the fuck is going on. And so let me take a look at this really quickly. So we got, here it is, 81 million plus 74 million equals 155 million. All right. So now we are going to look at this year's vote. We had 155 million for 2024, 67 million plus 72 equals 139. So you're going to tell me 139 million versus 155 million. You're going to tell me that over the damn near 16 million people decided we're not going to vote this year, even though the rhetoric and the division was 10 times what we've been exposed to in the past. You're going to tell me those 15 million people. Because here's the deal, guys. If President Trump got 88 million votes, well, that kind of accounts for where those other 15 million voters went, right? And I would say, oh, okay, like clearly a lot of people were swayed to Trump. And certainly more were, because he got more votes this year than last time. I'm not denying that fact. But where are the 15 million that just suddenly voted for Biden, that suddenly pushed the average of, like we talked about a minute ago, 62, 69, 65, 62, boom, 81. Okay, we had this huge influx. Now, let me say this, guys. A huge influx of votes wouldn't surprise me if it was somebody that was just an absolute fuck, just captivated the fucking minds of Americans. Inspiring, articulate, good vibes, good energy. You know, if a man or woman stepped on stage that brought that to the Democratic side, we could maybe justify this massive spike. But certainly we didn't have that. We had President Shits His Pants. We had a fucking demented old man. And guys, let's not try and sugarcoat this. That's who he was from day one. I still hear people talk about like, oh, you know, he had a bad performance in the debate, and it brought to our attention that it seemed like he had some cognitive issues. And it's like, fuck, man, I'm no doctor, but I lived with dementia, and I watched that in my own household for a long time. Anybody that's went through that knows exactly what's going on. And it was shocking to me that, I mean, the left will never, they shouldn't shock me anymore. What the fuck am I talking about? They will do anything, include putting a demented old man in power, purposefully and intentionally, knowing that he does not have the cognition to do the job. But that's because his puppet master, fucking Barry Soetoro, is in the background pulling the strings. We all know that. But regardless, I'm getting fucking off track here. Regardless, where are those people now? I implore the next administration, once you have the powers in place and you're able to really dive into that and take a look, I implore you to get to the bottom of this. I also implore you to pardon all of the January 6th insurrectionist, quotation marks. I assume that's probably going to happen the first day in office. And if it doesn't, that's egregious. Some of those good people have been subjugated to some of the harshest treatments without due process, and really going against the fabric of what America is supposed to be founded upon. Deprived of their constitutional rights. And I think we're going to see that. If I had to be a betting man, I think we're going to see that. But yeah, it's an exciting time, guys. It's an exciting time because I felt like we didn't have many options left to fight back against this evil regime of tyrannical motherfuckers. I just didn't think we were going to get out of this. I say all the time, by the ballot or by the bullet. And I had lost a lot of faith in the ballot. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, my faith that was lost, perhaps it wasn't rooted in pure fact, because we were able to do it this time. Now, I'm always very careful when I say we in regards to the Republican Party, because I'm not a Republican. I am a person that looks at the individuals, and I assess them as men and I assess them as women. And in current times, it sure seems like if your brain works, you find yourself in the Republican Party. And if you're a sleazy, scheming son of a bitch that wants to fucking do a bunch of backdoor deals and promote fucking propaganda and rise your way to the top as an individual, that you're looking at the Democratic Party. But the thing that I mean, even in my podcast studio sitting here, I'm like squinting and trying to comprehend why in the fuck are they running the people that they're running? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris don't inspire anybody. I inspire more people than they do. Like, it doesn't make any sense how, I mean, they're not articulate. They can't sit and share ideas. I mean, fuck, dude. Both Trump and Vance sat with Joe Rogan for 3 hours. Love them or hate them, they are men that hold the capacity to sit down and have long format discussion. And guys, long format discussion is not something that should be considered difficult. The only time long format discussion is difficult is when your policies and your agendas are rooted in lies and deceit. Because now you have to manage those. You've strung up this web of lies, and as you navigate through the web of lies with one person, it's going to be really, really difficult to remember exactly what that path looked like. And when you sit down with the next person, man, you better come to the same conclusions, or guess what? The fucking gig's up. You're caught. When you simply have a position that you stand on, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's easy to maintain your opinion because it doesn't change. You know, I've said before on the show plenty of times, Bernie Sanders, as fucked up as he is, I think he's saying consistently what he believes to be the truth in his brain. He might be an old fucking demented brain. Nah, I shouldn't say that. I don't think he's demented. But his positions are not rooted in the same type of morals and ideologies that our positions are rooted in. That is fucking certain. He is a communist. He wants a redistribution of wealth, all while he owns 5 houses. Like, don't get me wrong. I think the guy's a piece of shit. But I think his stances on things are consistent enough where he can just sit down and talk to you about them. And sitting down and talking to people has never been something that's difficult. Human beings have been doing it since the beginning of time. And then the last 2 presidential cycles, the Democrats put forward people that can't even speak. And when they do speak, it's so obvious that it is controlled and that it is something that really has to go through like several layers of scrutiny before that person is allowed to sit on a television production show or sit on a podcast or any of that stuff. And so Americans see this, you guys. You sit up there with their teleprompters and you spew the same shit, but you're not a real person. You don't hold real values. You don't hold real opinions. You certainly don't hold real courage or commitment or love and light and the things that Americans need right now. We can see it in your fucking eyes. And people saw it and they spoke last night. And I thought that was pretty cool, man. I thought it was cool that America's had enough. America's had enough, and they stood up, they pushed back, and President Trump won. And fucking A, man, it feels like Christmas morning. It really does. I'm sure you guys have seen that CNN clip going around. I'm going to play it on the show because I think this kind of sums up exactly how a lot of people feel. And to hear this from CNN, man, it was pretty interesting.
2020 election. You've mocked and ridiculed and put people in prison.
Oh, wait. That is Steve Bannon. That's actually a good rant too. That is not what I wanted to play for you guys, though. That was the wrong one. Let's see. KS. Here we go. All right, listen to this. CNN anchor talking about what happened last night.
Big deal. This isn't backing into the office. This is a mandate to do what you said you were going to do. Get the economy working again for regular working class Americans. Fix immigration. Try to get crime under control. Try to reduce the chaos in the world. This is a mandate from the American people to do that. I think I'm interpreting the results tonight as the revenge of just a regular old working class American, the anonymous American who has been crushed, insulted, condescended to. They're not garbage. They're not Nazis. They're just regular people who get up and go to work every day and are trying to make a better life for their kids, and they feel like they have been told to just shut up when they have complained about the things that are hurting them in their own lives. I also feel like this election, as we sit here and pour over this tonight, is something of an indictment of the political information complex. I mean, we've been sitting around here for the last couple of weeks, and the story that was portrayed was not true. I mean, we were told Puerto Rico was going to change the election. Liz Cheney, Nikki Haley voters, women lying to their husbands. Before that, it was Tim Walz and the camo hats. Night after night after night, we were told all these things and gimmicks were going to somehow push Harris over the line, and we were just ignoring the fundamentals.
Yes. Facts, dude. And watching Anderson Cooper sit there with a stupid fucking look on his face, man. Feels good. But you know what, guys? The truth is, victory feels good. Watching these fucking people cry, watching all the liberals cry on Instagram feels good, but that's not what's going to take us to the next level. What's going to take us to the next level now is showing up and putting in the work. Showing up and putting in the work as an individual, as a community, and as a country. That's what's going to take us to the next level. And that's what's going to lead me into this next segue. So let me shut my laptop. As mentioned in the beginning of the show, I got some heavy stuff to talk about. And I made some massive life changes this last week. Massive life changes in bringing some things to light and calling some things out that really, really, really proved to be destructive to what I consider my family. The things that I said were rooted in truth, and that is why I decided to say it. But let me be clear, just because they are rooted in truth doesn't mean that I don't hold a certain percentage of the blame. You know, there's been some things that have occurred inside of my family that if I could go back, I would do things differently. And if the other people could go back, I'm sure they would do things differently as well. And I'm not here to necessarily like project this or portray this as a sad story, because trust me, guys, I've had a lot of tears over the last week, and I've had a lot of reflection and introspection. And I wouldn't be sharing this with you guys as a manner to say, oh, poor me, and this is something that's going to be hard for me to deal with, and I'm sad. Like, you guys know me. That shit's not me. The reason I'm sharing it with you guys is because we talk about seasons of life often. We talk about the circles of people we keep. We talk about making sure the people on our left and right have our backs and we have theirs. And sometimes certain relationships, that's foundation, may have some toxicity in it. And that toxicity may not even be something that is prevalent or even observable to most people. But look at yourself in the mirror and ask if this person should be in my life in the capacity that they are. And if the answer is no, it is time to make a change. Now, we talk about people in our lives being beacons of light that help us pull us forward. Are they smarter than us? Do they make more money than us? Do they have a better heart than us? Do they have more courage than us? Do they have a skill set? Are they an asset? Like, what people bring to the table is important. And then what's the opposite of that? People that are anchors, people that are pulling you down, people that are dead weight, people you're outgrowing, people that are not growing at the rate that you're growing. And before you know that, there's separation, right? And just had a drink of my First Form Energy Blue Raspberry. That is not an ad. It's just delicious. In that capacity, it's pretty easy to say, I should keep this person, I should get rid of that person. Even though it can be hard, it makes sense on coming to a conclusion like, hey, you know what? I like this guy as a man. He's fun to be around, but at the end of the day, he's very negative. His actions prove that he doesn't make good decisions, and it's probably time to separate from him and put my energy and focus and intention in groups of people that are going to do good for me, as opposed to have a negative effect from sharing time and space with this person. Well, I learned something this week. I learned that sometimes when you create distance from somebody, it has nothing to do with you being ahead of them in life, or you being, or they being behind you in life. You could be at an equal place. They could be better, they could be worse, but sometimes you have to move apart from people simply because the trajectory of life is no longer congruent. You know, I can tell you at the end of the day, what happened in my family comes down to some core values, and it doesn't have to do with being a beacon or being an anchor. It has to do with us just having really different perspectives on how to navigate this world and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And I'm here to tell you guys, I think it makes it exponentially more difficult, because they are good people and I am a good person. They are doing well and I am doing well. I am challenging myself. They're challenging their self. But sometimes you and the other people around you can all be doing good, and a conclusion that you may need to step away from each other is unfortunately a reality that I had to face. And so it's really sad for me. I felt a lot of sadness this week. Sadness is not an emotion that I feel very often, if I'm being honest with you guys. I feel dark emotions. I feel rage. I feel anger. But sadness, it's pretty foreign to me. And I felt it a lot. But I'll tell you what, I leaned into it. Man. I went and parked my car on my property, fucking screamed at some trees, played some songs that fucking brought back some memories and some emotions. And I really had to ask myself a lot of tough questions. Look at my role in this, which is hard, right? Because inevitably when we have conflict with others, what does our default programming say to do? What did you do wrong? How did you fuck this situation up? You should have done this better. Well, I'm here to tell you, when I turn those questions around and ask them to myself, it's pretty clear to me I could have made better decisions. I could have changed the outcome of this had I got ahead of it sooner. I could have managed the situation better had I approached it with logic and not allowed emotion to trigger me. And there's a lot of growth and there's a lot of power in going through this experience, even though it feels really fucking bad. And so, if you guys heard my Instagram video that I posted when I went for a walk on my property a day or two ago, what I said is sometimes really, really, really good people come into your life. And when your season of life shifts, unfortunately, life may see those really, really good people out. And it doesn't make them a bad person, and it doesn't make me a bad person. It just makes a circumstance where we are no longer in congruency with each other occur. And that's it. So what does that mean moving forward? Well, we'll find out, right? I'm not quite sure what that means moving forward. I'm not going to have expectations. I'm not going to kind of set myself up for failure to hope it goes one way and then it goes another way. I'm an individual man. I have influence over my future. I will do what I can to take the situation in the direction that I want it to go. And if I succeed, great. And if I don't succeed, also great. Because I'm not in control of other people. I'm not in control of the universal outcome of every conflict. You put in the work. You take ownership of your mistakes. You own up to what your involvement was in the issue. You look at yourself in the mirror. You speak truth to yourself. You speak truth to the people that were affected by these situations that occurred. And then we have to move forward. And regardless of how it plays out, there's a good chance if you do those things with integrity and honesty, and you talk to yourself with integrity and honesty, and you don't try and hide from stuff, and you don't try and hide emotions, regardless of the outcome, you're going to be better off. And so, separate from this issue and also kind of intertwined with this issue, I have made a change in my life to not consume alcohol, THC with marijuana, obviously, or nicotine until 2026. That is a 14-month commitment. And why did I land on 14 months? Well, I told myself I'm going to go sober for the year 2025. And we'll get into that next, why I landed on that decision. But then when I looked at myself and I assessed myself, I said, well, you identified some deficiencies. And 2026 is 2 months away. So if there's a deficiency in your life, why in the fuck are you waiting until January 1st? Wrong, bitch. The change starts tomorrow morning. And so last Tuesday, effective immediately, I cut all of those things out. And I made the decision that I will be clean and sober all of 2025. And I can entertain moving back into substances in 2026. Now, I've had a lot of people tell me, when that time comes, 14 months from now, you won't want anything to do with it. Well, I don't know what I'm going to want because I've never done this before. But let me unpack why I came to this conclusion. Guys, I do not think I am an addict per se. I've never been addicted to alcohol, and I don't feel like I was addicted to weed, and I certainly have not been addicted to nicotine, but I love all those things. In a certain capacity, I truly love all those things. I like using them for very specific purposes. I like how they make me feel. I like how alcohol helps me really bond and have a good time with people socially. I'm a fucking social person anyways. Everybody that knows me here, I can go on the jiu-jitsu mats and we can talk and joke and laugh. I don't need alcohol to be social. But a perfect example is this, is I went out with Vortex's staff last week and we passed around a couple bottles of wine and just took the edge off and tons of laughs and good times. And I really enjoyed that night with those guys. I didn't need alcohol to have a good time, but I used alcohol and I did have a good time. Now, the same can be said for weed. I was very, very intentional about my use with marijuana in the beginning of trying it and starting to use it and starting to incorporate it into my life. I would initially smoke a puff or two right before bed. And what I noticed is it helped with my insomnia, because I have insomnia like a motherfucker, man. And I'd take a joint, I'd light it up, a few puffs, man, I'd take that edge off, get relaxed, and I'd lay down and I would sleep like a baby. Now they say that even though you sleep better, you're not getting into healthy sleep cycles, and marijuana can actually have a negative impact on your sleep quality due to keeping you out of REM. A lot of people have told me that when I say I use marijuana to sleep. Well, guys, we're going on, 2 or 3 years of almost consistent use to go to bed at night. And I feel like a pretty high-functioning human being. So I'm not here to say it affects it positively or negatively. What I'm here to say is my sleep patterns improved when I incorporated cannabis into my routine. Well, fast forward a year or two, And now instead of a couple puffs before I go to bed, I need to almost suck down a whole joint before I go to bed. And there's two things happening here. It is my tolerance going up because my body is used to the substance. And simultaneously, man, I'm starting to have a ritual with this. I'm starting to enjoy the ritual of this. I go sit on my back porch and light up at the end of the day. And it went from lighting up at 10 p.m. to 9 p.m. So now I'm stoned the last hour of the day instead of just going to bed with THC in my system to sleep. I'm actually high the last hour of the day. That's 1 hour of the day where I'm consistently high. And then it started creeping a little further back where like, dude, as soon as practice was over, let's light up. So, 7:30 or 8, smoke a joint. Now I'm looking at being high the last 2-3 hours of the day. And even at that point, I didn't fully comprehend the shift that was occurring because I convinced myself that, hey, marijuana helps me. I use it. I feel better. I feel more rested. I wake up. I feel like a better person. So I've always kind of just landed on, hey, it doesn't have the negative effects of alcohol. I'm certainly not addicted to it because I can stop at any moment without 1 second of hesitation. Therefore, it must not be a problem. Well, then there's a few times where now we're looking at like 5 or 6 p.m. This is like early evening. And I take a couple puffs. I'll be like, I'll smoke the rest of it before I go to bed. So now we're looking at being under the influence of marijuana for 4 or 5 hours. And I would say that started about a month ago, where it's like, hey, just take a puff or two at 5, and then we can finish the joint here at 7 or 8. And I'll tell you where I had this epiphany, guys. I had this epiphany in Wisconsin because I didn't bring joints to Wisconsin. Now, in full disclosure, I did bring a vape pen. So I still had the THC available, but I didn't have joints. And joints are my ritual. Joints are my routine. And as soon as I didn't have them, there was a part inside of me that almost felt like, fuck, man, I miss that. Not necessarily I need it. I wasn't having the fucking shakes. I wasn't having withdrawals or anything crazy. But I felt like, fuck, I miss having a joint at the end of the night. Fuck, I wish I had access to a joint. Now, I don't even know what the fucking marijuana laws in Wisconsin are, but I was out in the middle of fucking nowhere and I didn't have it. So regardless, I'm sitting in a tree stand because in a tree stand, there's a lot of thinking to be done. And when there's a lot of thinking to be done inside of nature, you start to go inside and you start to self-assess and you start to basically run inventory on your life. And guys, if I'm being completely honest, this inventory that I ran on my life ultimately affected both going clean and sober and then also the conflict inside of my family. So maybe don't go climb up a tree stand for a week. But I realized, you know what, bitch? You want that. You actually want that. And it is starting to influence your decision making because it's become your routine. It's become your ritual. Now, I killed the deer one night. I drive into town because I carried the deer out and I was covered in blood. And in the cabin, we don't have running water. We certainly don't. I mean, you can carry like a fucking 5-gallon can of water in to like wash dishes and whatnot. But there's certainly no capacity to wash clothes. And so my buddy Chad said, hey, there's a laundromat in town. You can go there, fucking $2 or whatever, wash your stuff. And I did that. Now, this laundromat is in Reedstown, Wisconsin, and it is a laundromat in the back and just a gas station and convenience store in the front. I was there for 90 minutes or so while my stuff washed and dried. And I got to observe something that fucking shocked me. And if you're from Reedstown, Wisconsin, I apologize for saying what I'm about to say, because it's not my intention to paint your community out to be bad people, but your people need some help, bro. Your people need some help. If you're from there and you're listening, trust me when I tell you your people need some help. I saw probably, I don't even know, because I wasn't counting. I wasn't taking inventory as this was happening. I was just observing it. And then I started to put the pieces together. 100%, not 99%, not 90%, 100% of the people that stopped into that gas station left with an alcoholic beverage. Most of them were a case of some type of beer. But regardless, every single person, man, woman, young and old, left with some type of alcoholic beverage. Now, not only did they leave with some type of alcoholic beverage, but, and I'm not trying to come across as arrogant, guys, or as arrogant, but it was very clear to me that they weren't projecting the best version of themselves. Most of them were overweight. Most of them had the manner in which they walked told me their bodies aren't strong, their bodies aren't healthy. Their skin, their hair. You could tell that they're not just stopping by to get a case of beer on this particular evening. The manner in which they were living their life told me they stopped by that store every night to pick up their alcoholic beverages. And more importantly than anything you can see in their physical body was the look in their eyes. They are a diminished version of themselves, and there's some type of suffering inside of them. And most of you guys listening know exactly what I mean when you say you can look at a human being's eyes, and it is a window to the soul, and we know if there is suffering inside. And in my opinion, it is irrefutable that there was suffering in those people. They looked disheveled. They weren't interacting with each other with high vibrations. You could just tell walking up to the checkout lady and putting your bottle of whiskey up there, or your case of beer, whatever it was that they were getting. I don't even know. Maybe they're St. Ides. I wasn't noticing what individual drink they were buying, but it was clearly alcohol, and they had tons of alcohol. That place is like a 7-Eleven and a liquor store all in one, and half of it is booze and beer. And those people are sick. I don't mean sick in the head. I mean those people's bodies and their souls are sick. And as all of these different aspects of my life are kind of coming to a head, I realized not only do I not want to be part of that, not only do I not want to partake in that, and I'll tell you guys, I came home, I reflected on a lot of this too. It wasn't like I watched that happen and boom, right? I watched that happen, and it was just something that I put in the back of my mind, and I've revisited it a couple times, and I thought, you know what, man? I need to be if I want to level up in life, chasing the things that we chase on this show, fitness, love, entrepreneurship, growth, business, relationships, camaraderie, jiu-jitsu. Like if the things that are important to me, I want to make progress in them, I need to be the complete opposite. I need to be as far away from being one of those people as humanly possible. And I said, well, it's very clear. One thing that they incorporate at a high level is alcohol. So what would step one look like, being as far opposite as those people? Is cutting liquor and weed and even nicotine out of my life. And that's the choice that I landed on. I don't think that this choice of going clean and sober for the next 14 months was necessarily rooted in me needing to make this life change. It wasn't dire straits I'm not fucking shooting heroin into my arm. More importantly, my use of these substances is not being detrimental to my relationships. In fact, fuck, man. In fact, the relationships that are on the chopping block right now, those were put on the chopping block clean and sober. And so I don't think my alcohol use is something that's even really concerning to me for my health or my longevity or my professional life or my personal life. But I realize it's certainly not going to help me get better in any of those aspects. Because when people lean into that, it does the opposite. And if you don't need it, and it only has the potential to hurt you, why are you using it? What is the point of incorporating that into your routine? Now, guys, I think it is important for me to say, because I've had so many people reach out to me and be like, brother, I'm so proud of you. This is awesome. You have no idea what this journey is going to feel like. It's going to change your life. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. And I hope all of that is true, and it very well may be. But I also don't expect a massive change in my life, because I've convinced myself that these substances weren't necessarily just dragging me down. I was just getting a little out of control with them. And that's why I made this shift. But what I want to say to you guys is, if you are someone that smokes to go to bed, if you are someone that likes to have a glass of wine with your wife, I am by no means saying sobriety is the way to go, and I've been clean and sober for 842 days and 16 hours. Like, if I'm being honest, guys, I think that a lot of people replace their alcohol addiction with an addiction of sobriety. They got to talk about it all the time. They got to manage it. They got to go to their meetings. They have to, it becomes a new thing to focus on and like celebrate. And it becomes a part of your identity. I don't give a fuck how many days I've been sober. Now you might say, if you don't give a fuck how many days you've been sober, why didn't you just say, I'm going to go sober until I feel like I don't need to be sober anymore? And I'm going to tell you, because ever since I was young, I succeed at things when I look into the future and I put a date on the end of it. That's how I win with fitness. That's how I win with selection. That's how I win with jiu-jitsu. I look into the future and I put a date out there because I know that date's coming. And now I have a exercise and discipline ahead of me while that date approaches. Ranger school, same thing. This is the last day. So nothing matters until, well, September 11th, 2001 was my last day of Ranger school. But obviously throughout the course, I didn't know what was coming. I was just looking forward to that being the last day of Ranger school. Even now at 44, there's a jiu-jitsu tournament. I think it's April 14th. And I told my team, I said, I'm doing that with you guys. That's the date I'm putting on the calendar. And I'm signing up as your coach. Not because I want to revisit and attempt to become some great competitor, but because if I ask that of my men, I have to ask that of myself. And so from time to time, I step on the competition mats to test my jiu-jitsu. But more importantly than me being on the mats with another man is showing my students that I can do this too. And I can walk by your side on this journey. And that's where I landed on the sobriety challenge. Put a date out there. Commit to that date. Publicly state that date to my friends, my families, you guys here that share the show with me. And for me, that means that my success is pretty much already done. There is no, oh, fuck, I want to drink, dude. No, I haven't even craved a drink. And guys, alcohol wasn't my thing anyways. Weed was my thing. But I haven't craved a joint either. I really haven't. I made that mental commitment to shift. My brain shifted, and now we're off to the races. Weed not a part of my life. Roger, moving on. Because if I hem and haw on it, if I sit out on my porch and say, man, like I really like that nightly ritual. Let's fake this nightly ritual and get one of those cigarettes that's actually gum. And I can blow a puff of powdered sugar out of it that looks like smoke. And then I can hold it up to my lips and get the tactile reflex that I get from a joint. And that's going to help me work through this desire to get stoned. Like, fuck all that, dude. I told myself no, and it's done. And I feel you're going to be shocked to hear this. I feel fucking great. I have had it's been an emotional week, as spoken about earlier, but in regards to the sobriety aspect, feel fucking great. Now, I'm waking up at 4, staring at the ceiling. I'm waking up at 2, staring at the ceiling. But my issues with insomnia is a challenge to me, for me to figure out in a different capacity. And now that I know marijuana will not be the solution, well, maybe I have to go on a little journey. I actually called the VA yesterday and ordered a sleep study. And they're sending it to me in the mail. And I'm gonna see what's up with that. See, like, is there markers in my sleep that you can actually derive data from and say, hey, based on A, B, and C, this is what seems to be the problem. Maybe that's a better option than covering it up with marijuana. Time will tell. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about cutting out booze and being clean, 100% clean and sober, fuck, man, my sex drive is quadrupled. Now, I'm also going to be in full transparency. I took a break from BioPro, and I got back on BioPro as soon as I decided to go clean and sober too. And so, is it the BioPro? Is it not having THC? Is it a combination of both? We'll find out. But, I was talking to another friend of mine, one of my black belts, who, this motherfucker, you want to talk about a guy that used to fucking smoke weed? He would eat 600 milligrams of edibles in one sitting and then go to work. Like, for us mere mortals, if I have 100, and that lets you know where I was at. I could have 100, right? I could eat 100 milligrams of edibles, and it would put me on the moon, but it was manageable. And this motherfucker could eat 600. And so he told me, he said, as soon as I went clean and sober, and he's been sober for fucking 4 or 5 years now, he said, my testosterone levels increased massively. And so that's something to think about. I haven't Googled it. I haven't looked up any research or any data. I don't know if THC is detrimental to the production of testosterone, but this guy is a super athlete. Jiu-jitsu is absolutely phenomenal. And when he tells me about experiences that he has with substances and nutrition and changes in his body, I actually give that more value than what I would hear from most doctors. Because as you guys know, we're athletes, we train, we understand our bodies as good as anyone. And so there's the potential from what I've heard from guys around the gym, including him. Hey, your testosterone will improve too. And so, again, I feel fucking 16 years old again. I feel healthier. My knees aren't aching as much. You know what, guys? My knees are barely aching, and it's only been a week. And it was to the point where I was in pain constantly. And so, again, we'll see what happens, guys. But I wanted to share that journey. I feel like I'm starting to ramble on things that aren't as necessary to the story to button this up. But I've made some massive life changes with my family. I've made some massive life changes with my substance usage. And it's onward. It's on to the next thing. Growth is going to be exponential in 2025. The book is almost complete. I'm going back on Cleared Hot with Andy here shortly, so you guys will have something. We'll be able to look forward to that. You know, it is never lost on me that Andy is a reason why I'm sitting here now doing what I do. And I love always going back out there and sharing time with him because he's become a good friend over the last few years. Other than that, guys, just know we're all going through something. We're all struggling with something. We all have skeletons in our closet. We all have addiction issues. We all have frustration with politics. We're all struggling with our health and our fitness. Nobody gets out of this without confronting all of those things. And confronting those things is hard and it's difficult. And it can even be fucking scary. But just remember this. Confronting those things and diving into the emotional response that we get from experiencing those things and allowing your life to kind of feel those ups and downs, those peaks and valleys, man, that's where the journey of life comes alive. I was talking with Lappin last week, and we were talking about this very subject because he's going through some shit as well. And I said, hey, you know what, bro? At the end of the day, no one pays to ride a flat roller coaster. The excitement comes from contrast. The excitement comes from fucking going up over that peak where everything's fucking rad, and then you zip down and you crash and you fucking burn. And now you're in the depths and you're looking up and you're thinking, how the fuck do I get here? What do I got to do next? And you start crawling out of that. And through that fucking process and that perseverance, you find pride. You find belief. You find yourself. And you derive strength from it. And just when you think everything's good, I'm back up the mountain, I'm about to get to the summit, guess what's going to fucking happen? An avalanche is going to hit, and it's going to rip your ass right back down to the bottom, and the process continues all over again. I used to be fucking hopeful that by this age I'll have everything settled in and figured out, and by that age I'll have this settled in and figured out. And you know what, guys? There is no age where you arrive. There is no age where things come together. It's peaks and valleys until our last breath. And if that's something that you take that causes fear or uncertainty, I'm telling you guys right now, we need to accept as men, and for the 4 women that listen to this show, it's life, man. It's life of the endless endeavor.